If you want to do your own work, find your own comps, really dial down on what are the properties out there that really align with the property you're investing in.
Putting yourself in the shoes of the client or the customer makes all the difference. And I recommend that too to a lot of people that are starting out, whether you're co-hosting or you host a new property, like go stay in your property for a little bit and see what the quirks are.
Cleanliness score, communication. Those are the two things that start to break down as you scale.
What's going on, STR Nation? Here's your host and brother from another mother. I'm another Pani here with the man himself, Mr. Mike Riley. What's going on, Riley?
I'm doing awesome, man. We just launched a property on the lake and got some photos back from Andrew Keller, who is the best short-term rental photographer in the game. He is not cheap, but his product is better than anybody's. And like, I'm so excited. We just got a $11,000 booking, came in literally 12 hours after we uploaded the photos. So that's my big win for the week. I'm super pumped to see that thing fill up for the summer. And yeah, shout out to Andrew for getting us the awesome captures via photos.
Yeah, they look amazing. Yeah, that property looks amazing. Super excited for you guys. I am in Denver, Colorado right now. I got to speak at Jody's hospitality summit yesterday. And mostly I got to go see my sister, right? Like that's the moment Jody said, come speak. I'm like, where is it? In Denver? I'm like, yes, I don't need to know anything else. She just bought a house. So she's 27. So I'm super proud of her and her husband. And it's so weird, man. I don't know for you guys to have brothers and sisters, but being the older brother and seeing your little sister, first of all, not be little at all whatsoever, but then also being such a woman, like such a beautiful woman, and like such a like the way she treats her dog, the way she treats her husband, right? Like the human that she is special. Like, you know what I mean? Like it makes me like appreciate it. And I told her I wish she lived closer. Like anytime I am with the people that I love, you, her, right, like children, right? Is I'm like, how do I do this always? Right? Because my life at home is very monk-like, and like, unless me and my girlfriend are hanging out, I'm like not spending time with people that I love. So I'm like, how do I do that, right? But having said that, we had the pleasure of having Jamie Lane from AirDNA on the show once again, and you and I were talking about this off air. He's one of the most enjoyable conversations that I always have. And again, guys, it's going to be a show that is maybe more information packed and less inspiring than others and less kind of storytelling than others. And yet it was amazing. And as Riley and I were talking about this, what I realized is that the reason I love talking to Jamie is because he loves what he does and is genuinely excited about what he does. And it always reminds me of the fact that in sales or in life in general, it's your excitement that will determine the outcome. So being an enthusiastic sales guy, host, parent, husband, wife, brother, sister, son, daughter, right? That what makes a difference. Like that what makes a difference in the way that you get to enjoy your life, but also in the way that people receive you, and just in the overall quality of enjoyment of your own experience in life.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to be around just people that give you energy, not people that suck your energy. And Jamie's one of those guys that he could be talking about data all day long on spreadsheets and make it exciting. And it's because of the passion and energy that he brings. And the data is really good too, obviously, with their DNA being the best, in my opinion. It was an awesome show and always enjoy his insights. And he dropped some really good insights too on tariffs and demand and what we're seeing across all the different vacation markets. And then also we got into investing and what kind of we're seeing on our side from the mastermind members that we have, what type of properties that are investing in. And then lastly, just the awesome new updates AirDNA has made, thanks to Jamie essentially taking over product, I don't know, a year or two ago and making it into a very, very usable product now that I use on a daily basis. So it's all around great show today.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And a great conversation. So yeah, man, I got nothing to add. It was amazing. Listen through it. Great tips and just a great conversation with an amazing guy. So I am excited to welcome Jamie Lane on the show.
Hey guys, excited to be back. It's been a while.
It's been a while. Yeah, I think last time, for some reason, every time you come on the show, I'm not home. I was in Portugal last time. I am in Denver, Colorado today. So I know anytime you're on the calendar, now I got to book a trip to go somewhere, because if not, I'm going to break our tradition of me traveling. But for those that somehow don't know who Jamie Lane is and what you do, give us a brief overview of what you're all about.
Yeah, so my official title is the Chief Economist and SVP of Analytics at AirDNA. And I assume most of your listeners know what AirDNA is, but we're a short-term rental data analytics company. We track globally and all the short-term rentals around the world, what they're earning, and give tools to investors and hosts, help them find better investments and operate those investments profitably. And my job is to really dig into the data every day and try to make sense of it. So what are the trends? What are the sort of insights that investors can be using to make better investments? And then I'm more recently, over the past year, I've gotten much more involved on the product side and making sure that all the sort of product releases we're doing are sort of going to be really well received by all of our subscribers and free users.
I love that. What helps you understand that? Because I think as business owners, we often want to launch new things. And sometimes, for some reason, right, like there's a miscommunication between what the customer wants or their expectations and what we decide to give them as business owners. So how, because the new stuff you guys have launched has all been great. So you definitely hit a good cadence with it. So what would you say has contributed to you getting better at doing that?
Yeah. One is I'm a user of the platform. So I've been using AirDNA data for 10 years now, which is kind of crazy. Like I was, I think, the first subscriber to AirDNA back in 2015. I was a subscriber of the data from 2015 to 2020 when I joined the company sort of full time. So I've known the company, I've known the data sort of inside and out. I've been using it as an investor the past year. So I've been hosting on Airbnb for 12 years now, but just last year bought my first property that was purely an investment. And to be fair, like I did most of my analysis in Excel. I found the comps I wanted. I've watched probably like every video, every sort of analysis on like how to use AirDNA. I've talked with our product team on how they think people should use it. Then I went about like using it myself, and there was all these sort of points of pain of like data I trust, data I don't trust, comps I trust, comps I don't trust, like in terms of getting to a number that I feel comfortable investing in. And essentially what I went to the product team with is like, we can do better in creating a tool that I mean, like solves the problem that people are looking to do in our data every day. And that was, I think it's just knowing the data, knowing the tool, knowing the use cases, talking with clients. And then I do think there's some aspect to it of like, you've got to be an expert to take all the feedback that we get. Because talk with 200 or 300 clients, like everyone's going to have sort of different opinions on like how the platform should go, what you should be able to do. And that ability to like sort of form themes and then form opinions over like, this is something that you should be able to do, or this is something that you shouldn't. Because a lot of like experts like Mike give me feedback and they're like, you should do this, this, and this. And it's like, yeah, that's great because you're sitting in the platform every day. But like, I mean, over half our users sort of come in, use it for a month, and then once they sort of get their investment done, they're done. So we had to make it, I mean, from the beginning, as simple as possible, and then try to start layering in more advanced features for the power users.
Yeah, 100%. It's putting yourself in the shoes of the client or the customer, the end user, makes all the difference. And I recommend that too to a lot of people that are starting out hosting, whether you're co-hosting or you host a new property. Like, go stay in your property for a little bit and see what the quirks are, and like stay a week if you can and see what the differences are. And straight into some of the updates. I've been using it almost every day for the last like 3, 4 years. It's gotten so much better in the last 6 months ever since you started making those changes. And I believe you bought a property in, is it in Georgia, like the Blue Ridge area?
Yeah, North Georgia, not Blue Ridge on the east side of the state. It's still in the mountains though. But yeah, bought a property there last May, and it's been operating now for about 6.5 months.
Yeah, awesome. And is it beating your projections, or is it like right on it, maybe a little bit lower?
So far, it's right on.
Nice.
I've got a social post where I sort of saved my initial monthly projections. I've been updating, and I hold myself true. I'm a little worried about May right now. It's a little weak in terms of bookings. It's sort of this in between time. We're not quite summer yet, and it's definitely like a weekend. Did great during spring break. Actually, did well during the winter. Actually, beat expectations in February and January. Um, but yeah, I'm sort of right on track for sort of annual projections.
Awesome. Yeah, I saw the same thing in our mountain markets too. May is always a tough month. May and September in the mountains, for whatever reason, is always a tough month, or 2 tough months. So for the listeners that have used AirDNA but maybe haven't used in the last like 3 months, what are some of the changes that you guys have come out with?
Yeah, so one and it sort of culminates and we've sort of rebuilt Rentalizer. So we started with, and Rentalizer, for those of you who don't know, is our tool for sort of estimating the annual revenue for any property around the world. So you put in an address, and we're gonna spit out a number of this is what we think it can earn. But behind that, there's like probably 10 or 15 different models running to sort of get to that projection. And so what we started with was just sort of a redesigned report, sort of making it more apparent what are the comps being used, the comparable properties being used, and sort of setting that projection, be able to clearly visualize them in relation to the property you're estimating for. And I think really importantly, putting a confidence score sort of on that estimate. So how confident are we in that projection? And right now it's just a low, medium, high, and it gives you a sense of the range of properties sort of going into that estimate. So if there's a really wide range in sort of the properties going in, let's say it's luxury property in the Hamptons, like there's not going to be a lot of properties that are earning right around the same amount, given the sort of wide range that you get in sort of larger luxury home type properties. And then sort of juxtapose that to like a 2-bedroom condo in Panama City. Those are a dime a dozen. There's so many of them. There's so many that have essentially the same amenities. They're operating in the same building. Like when we do a projection for properties like that, like they're all going to be right around the same amount, and we're going to be able to put a real high confidence on that estimate. And we wanted to sort of bring that front and center for people. Like if you're making $1 million investment, you should know whether there's sort of a big confidence range on that, sort of large, or sort of really tight range, and that we're highly confident in what that's going to be able to earn. We then launched custom comps about two weeks ago. So now you can go in, neat sort of view where you select your market. It's going to show you all the properties, and you can sort of add properties into your custom comp. And then from that, you can even click in and sort of see the historic performance by month or sort of annually for that set of properties. And then coming, I think it's like in a week, you're going to be able to create a custom Rentalizer projection from that set of properties. So you'll be able to click a button from your custom comp set and generate a Rentalizer report from that sort of gives you that full breakdown of the expected annual performance and the breakdown of monthly revenues for that property, which I think is really going to be a game changer in terms of if you want to do your own work, find your own comps, really dial down on what are the properties out there that really align with the property you're investing in, that you can then select them. Or if, let's say, you've generated a Rentalizer report and you're like, you know what, Jamie, like there's one really bad comp in there. Like, I really wish I could just throw that out and see what the new number would be. You're going to be able to do that. You're going to be able to click edit on the Rentalizer report, and there's going to be a little trash can there for each comp. You can remove the one, hit save, and then it's going to recalculate the annual projections and the monthly projections for that property without that one comp removed. And or if maybe you want to add a new one into it, it's really, I think, going to change some of the workflow for the average user today.
100%. And that's what I've been doing like the last like 3-4 years is exactly that process. And now I don't have to leave AirDNA to do it. Because I was using saved lists for a little bit before you had the custom comps, and then I would save the list, and it actually created like an average based on the properties, which I'm sure is pretty similar to the what you'll be launching. So I'm excited to use it and see it.
Yeah. No, save lists and custom comps was just the sort of evolution of save lists. And one of the other exciting things is with the redesign of Rentalizer now and with custom comps, it lets you save all the Rentalizer reports that you've done. So let's say like, and I invested in my property in May, and I want to go back and see like what I actually projected as of May of last year and now compare that to what it's earning. You're going to be able to save every Rentalizer query you do and then be able to go back and see it over time, or easily just refresh it. Like, let's say there's a property you're watching and you're like, oh, I wonder what that projection is now, like 6 months later, like how the other comps are doing. You can just go in, click in that old one, hit refresh, and then save or not, and be able to sort of preserve what that original projection was over time, which I think is fun. Like there's so many sort of subsets within Rentalizer. Like you can do your expenses calculator, for which every time you used to do a Rentalizer, you'd sort of play with the expenses. And then once you clicked out of it, that all disappeared, right? Like now all those expense sort of projections will save. So you can really dial down on what you think the profit of that property will be. And then for those of you that haven't seen it, this isn't necessarily new in the last couple months, is new in like the past 5 months. We're showing the cleaning fee revenues associated with that total revenue projection. So we do include cleaning fees in that annual projection, but now you can click into the calculator and see and what percent and what the amount is of cleaning fees that were part of that total annual projection, which if you're using cleaning fees as a pass-through expense, can just let you better dial in like what's going to actually be revenue to you versus potentially revenue going to your cleaning staff.
Dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. So Jamie, if somebody hasn't used AirDNA in a while, right? Let's say they bought a property maybe a year ago, 2 years ago. I know a lot of people haven't bought since 2022, 2023. What would you say is the number one thing that you would tell them that they should do in order to really maximize AirDNA and what you guys have now created?
So one of the sort of call out two things, like I've been talking about Rentalizer and sort of investor sort of side. We've also been building out the host side. And like there's some really cool new features on the host side. One is in the same way that you can create a comp set for a new investment, you can create a comp set for all of your existing properties. So you go into AirDNA, you can connect to your Airbnb account. We're going to pull in all your properties and we're going to find comps for every single one of your properties. We're going to then compare your future performance. So when are you booked, when you're not booked, compare your occupancy, forward occupancy, ADR, RevPAR to all your sort of competitors. And there you can sort of customize that comp set. And then for each competitor that you call out, we'll show you the forward calendar. So what are the rates for each day in the future for those competitors, whether they're booked or not. So you can go in and see, okay, I'm not booked on this day. Here are the 10 people, other listings I'm competing with. How are they priced on any given night? And start to figure out like, what do I actually need to do in my pricing to make sure that I'm sort of crushing or that I'm going to get booked on the days that I need to. Because in the past, we'd sort of just shown like the median available rate. The average available rate doesn't tell me much. Like what I really need to do is sort of see that range, like where are people priced high, where are people priced low? How does that relate to me? To get a sense of like, okay, and what is my chance to actually get booked at the rate I'm at now? And do I need to raise or lower that price? So really excited about that. And then for existing AirDNA users, if you go onto the platform now, you'll see with our acquisition of Uplisting, we do provide everyone one free listing. So that's sort of new. If you're not using a PMS, we think you should, so much so that we're going to include it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay. So to switch up topic a little bit, the world is in an interesting moment. Mike and I have been talking about it quite a bit. US travel is down. What are you seeing? Like how are these tariffs impacting us? What do you see the demand being? Do you see a visible trail in the data showing us movement of people going more towards other parts of the world versus the States? Talk to us about that.
So I'm just going to timestamp us now because I feel like this.
By tomorrow.
So we're talking on May 1st. Right now, the world's not burning down, but it really does feel like it changes on a day-to-day basis. And we're going to hear actually from Airbnb this afternoon. They're going to report earnings. And I track this data every day. And the answer is it depends. It depends where you're at. It depends what your exposure is to different segments. And I'm going to tell you why it depends. So overall in the US, only about 11% of nights sold come from international travelers. So 89% of guests are domestic. And if you're like in a market like the Ozarks or even in the North Georgia mountains where my property is, we get almost no international travelers into that market. So in the Ozarks, it's 1%. In the North Georgia mountains, it's 2.5%. So if international travel disappears in that market, like I don't really care that much. Like it's not going to impact my performance much. In Miami, it's 30%. In San Francisco, it's 25%. There's so many markets out there where international travel actually makes up a real sizable portion of overall demand. It's primary in the largest 50 metro areas and really those gateway cities. So it's Miami, New York, Chicago, Boston. You think about Maui, Oahu, all the Hawaiian markets, so dependent on international travelers. San Francisco, Seattle, San Diego, LA. So in those type of markets, like we're already seeing as we look out into the summer, sort of forward pacing, we're seeing occupancy pacing anywhere from 5 to 10% down. In the typical sort of vacation rental market, we're actually seeing occupancy up this summer. We're seeing it pacing up about 1 or 2%. And then when we look overall at it, just like overall booking volume, like on a week-to-week basis, and that's something I sort of look at every week, we have not seen really any week turn negative. So we're not seeing fewer bookings overall coming through into listings today than we saw in any prior year. But we are seeing weakness in certain pockets that are especially like in certain cities and have clearly turned negative that are really dependent on international travel. And then on the other side of where we started to see some weakness is those properties that look to accommodate budget type travelers, because that's where we've started to see some weakness on the consumer side. Those travelers that have been impacted by inflation over the past couple of years, those that I maybe see the uncertainty out there of like, do I think I'm going to have a job? Do I expect prices to go up on sort of the things I need to sort of feed my family? And those are the type of travelers that we've seen like, you know what? We're going to pause on bookings right now. We're going to wait and see how things play out. And then maybe I'll book my summer travel later on.
That makes sense. Have you seen inflation reflect in overall where the pricing has been? So would you say like the same way that eggs have gone up as your Airbnb also gone up side by side? We should have an egg index to pricing. Like where is that?
I'm absolutely like, if you think about when prices were really going up in the economy in 2021 and 2022, those were the exact same times when our industry occupancies were at record highs. And when occupancies are at high levels, like whether it's the season or I'm just across the board that we saw during those years, like that gives us the ability to push prices higher. And because there's scarcity, because there's fewer listings able to be booked, and people are willing to pay those higher rates. So we saw prices really push up in 2021, 2022. As occupancies came down, things definitely got a bit more competitive. And we actually, in 2023, saw prices revert negative a little bit as occupancy was coming down. But over the past 2 years, 2024 and into 2025, we have seen pricing power come back as occupancy is stabilized. Like past 12 months or so, we've been seeing occupancy sort of, I'm slowly like ticking back up. And just the stabilization that I'm not losing occupancy to my competitors, I think has given people the confidence of, okay, I'm not going to cut rates anymore. I'm going to at least hold or even slightly increase my rates as I sort of set prices for the year ahead.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so the STRs are kind of stabilizing in terms of occupancy and also rates, but investing on the investing side, interest rates are still really high. And obviously, with Trump and his tariffs that he's putting on everywhere, small businesses are starting to feel it. There's starting to be a lot of hiring freezes. How have you seen the interest rates move over the last month? And maybe what are some of the indications you're seeing for the future for investors that are just hoping for that interest rate to come down?
Yeah. And one on the interest rate side, like, and we have our forecast of sort of supply, and that sort of anticipates like above 6% for really over the next 2 years. So those investors, in my opinion, waiting for interest rates to sort of come down, like are going to be waiting a while longer. So if your investment is sort of dependent on interest rates, like you're probably not going to be investing. And that's where it's like the other side of the equation of what are the homes available for sale and the home values out there. And we do expect to see some sort of weakness or pockets of weakness in home values over the next year or two. And then also on revenue appreciation, like we are seeing overall revenues for short-term rentals increasing. So if your sort of debt cost is like fixed, let's say above 6%, I'm finding areas where maybe they're not as attractive for single family home buyers, whether they're using it for long-term rentals or their own sort of home usage, finding areas of opportunity on that side. And then also really digging into what areas are seeing occupancy increases, seeing rate appreciation, where if you go in, like properties are earning more money, and that money relative to the cost, like is actually a good investment today. So we are seeing finally, like because revenues are increasing, because home values are coming down, like an area that might not have been a good investment maybe a year or two ago, maybe is starting to show up on the radar today.
Yeah.
One more question on that, and E brought it up earlier too, is there's all this hype around the super properties and like the really themed out, amenitied out type of properties. Are you seeing that in the data as well, that they're typically getting higher occupancy and much higher rates? Are those typically outliers in a lot of the markets that you're seeing?
Yeah, and absolutely earning higher occupancy. I think it's a combination of just super, and it obviously it depends on the property and whether they're doing things that are actually attractive to the demographics that are going to that market. And you could do a super property that's going to crush it in Gatlinburg and have it just totally fail in Scottsdale, right? But those properties that really sort of appeal to the demographic that's going into that market, earning higher occupancies, being able to generate higher rates. And I think importantly, like it's all tied to the review scores too. If you're doing a super property and you're getting 5-star reviews, you're crushing it. If you're getting 4.5, 4.4, like doesn't matter how tricked out your property. If guests don't like it, like it's gonna impact your performance. So it's got to be married with the operation side too, because more and more guests are reading the reviews. I think more and more you're going to see if it doesn't happen with the latest release, like there's going to be AI analysis of the reviews, really pointing out to potential guests, like what are the highlights, what are the lowlights of the property, and you've got a lot of bad things. Those things are going to be highlighted more and more. Like, and if you thought that Airbnb wouldn't want to highlight the worst things about their property. Like, there's last year, Airbnb rolled out guest favorites. And as part of that, they also had the bottom 10%. So yeah, they call out the top 10%, but they also call out the bottom 10% because they want guests to find the best properties just as much as the guests do.
Love that. You hinted to AI, if you can speak about it. Is there future things in the making that would help hosts or investors better use AirDNA because you guys are rolling in some kind of AI assistant?
Yeah, no, we've got some AI stuff coming out and sort of helping you analyze properties, helping you get to sort of best areas to invest based on sort of what guests are saying about different locations. Absolutely. We've got some stuff in the roadmap. I won't tease too much there, but also like we've been using an AI and machine learning for years in terms of, and we've got this machine learn model that actually helps us predict the earnings of properties, whether things are getting booked or blocked. We've got great models in terms of actually estimating the revenue potential of any home. So we've actually got, and I manage our team of data scientists. Like we've been doing some amazing work into really refining those models, making sure we're finding the best comparable properties. Like there's so much sort of AI and that happens behind the scenes that you don't see that is just getting better. And then there's going to be so much that happens on sort of the guest facing side that gets rolled out under the property management systems. And we're already seeing it around guest communication. And I think some of the things we really want to do more is around helping people optimize all the other things in your listing besides price that's going to help you drive incremental revenue to your property that maybe others aren't doing yet.
I want to get back to something you mentioned earlier. You said if you get a super property, you theme it out, you amenity out really well, and you get those 5-star reviews, that's the secret sauce right there. And I feel like there's just so many property managers out there, the big ones. You know, obviously we saw Vacasa got acquired by Casago, right? And then Evolve is still one of the bigger players. Red Awning's still out there, and they have really nice properties as well. But they're starting to lose properties, you know, left and right by the hundreds and thousands on a monthly basis. Is there any data that you've seen that, you know, better hosting means higher revenue or higher RevPAR? What have you seen from the hosting side in increasing revenue?
Yeah, I think part of it does go back to what I was saying about review scores. Every market I analyze, it's clear, like the more listings you get, the lower the review scores that you sort of generate. And it's not across the board. Like it's on things like cleaning and the cleanliness score and around communication. Those are the two things that start to break down as you scale. And a lot of that sort of happens around sort of giving local teams accountability and also not just accountability, but incentives to make it right and to sort of really outperform. So I do like the sort of change that Casago and Vacasa are doing and they're going to be moving, and they've talked about it publicly, Vacasa to a franchise type model where there's going to be local ownership, local management, and it's not going to be sort of top down to the local markets and we just saw it really didn't work for Vacasa and led to a lot of mismanaged properties that were sort of easy pickings for a lot of sort of smaller property management companies or co-hosts. So I do expect a pretty sort of swift turnaround with a lot of the local Vacasa markets once you start putting those under really local control and ownership. That doesn't get around the fact that most property managers are locally operated and owned and are still getting crushed by a lot of the sort of smaller hosts out there that are really operating well their properties. So focusing on revenue management, focusing on better sort of guest performance. blows my mind because we look at in the data, like still how few hosts and property managers are using dynamic pricing tools out there. Like less than 50% of the properties
Wow.
have fewer than 4 rates in their forward calendar. Like, can you
Wow.
imagine one of your properties, like 4 rates? Like that's like weekend, weekday, like peak season, off season. And so there's so much opportunity to increase performance in your property, to better perform, better operate the property, and sort of drive incremental performance. We are seeing some of the biggest growth both on the listing side and on the sort of RevPAR side. So actually outgrowing in terms of RevPAR is this sort of sweet spot from like 6 to 20 listings. Like that's where we see people, like they're not so big that they're getting into scaling issues, and they're not so small that they can't start to get efficiencies of like really learning how to use price labs or AirDNA or their PMS and really optimize their operations.
Jamie, would you say that then the 20 on the upper range, right? The 20 unit is where you start seeing that reverse correlations on cleanliness and guest communication, or is that number higher? Like, are we talking more like 40, 50?
Higher. So I've looked at it. I spent some time actually trying to find the break point of like,
Yeah,
when do
which
things
is
break down? It's like 20 to 50 is like stable. Over 50 is where things start to really break down into in scores. And then it really accelerates over 50. Like 50 to 100 is a little bit worse. 100 to 150 is a little bit worse. Over 150, things really start to deteriorate.
yeah.
What's fun
And
is like it's not all of them. Like there are examples out there, and we call it out we do this best property manager report every year. And we're sort of gearing up for the 2025 version. There are examples of the out there of like over 50 properties still generating like a 4.9. Like they're unicorns to be sure, but there's definitely examples out there of like how you can scale and still continue to generate higher review scores.
I love that. Jamie, do you see the breakdown happen kind of first on the communication bucket or in the cleanliness?
Usually it's in the communication bucket and then on the cleanliness one. Because
Fascinating.
yeah, and that's where I'm hoping some of these new AI tools can really start to help of like, and we've all sort of been through the process of trying to like, take it to virtual employees, trying to scale that way. But so many of the questions now can actually be automated, and not just like canned responses, but like, let's analyze the history. Let's have all the information about the property. Let's know what your locks are. Let's know what your stoves are. What version of the TV it is, where they can actually provide a better response than even the homeowner could if they were answering themselves, because they have sort of complete information about the property and what they'd actually need to do. So I'm very bullish on companies like HostBuddy, Bestie AI that are really leveraging and sort of leaning into AI. And I think, are they perfect now? No. But and you look at what ChatGPT was 2 years ago and what it is today, like it's evolving like at a amazingly quick scale.
Yeah, I love that.
So Jamie, last year you guys released the first top property managers in the country report, and STR Secrets Mastermind members, we had 21 on that list. And this year I'm going to set the over under at 40. So I'm going to set it at 40. But and we'll have to come back after you release it, but what are some of the things that make you a top manager, property manager, or co-host in your report?
Yeah. So as long as we stick with the same criteria, which I think overall we're going to stick with the same criteria of like, you got to have over 20 listings. You've got to have a certain activity in those listings, like review to reservation ratios. Like we're not going to be pulling in property managers that have a whole bunch of listings, but they're not really active. You got to be actually in this. And then it's just like once we sort of get rid of some of those and apply some of those filters, then it's really just like highest guest review score across Airbnb and Vrbo. We are, I think, going to be adding in some superlatives though, maybe most improved. So which ones have seen the biggest increases in their overall review scores? And maybe some other fun things like that to sort of not just call out the best, but also ones that are sort of making improvements and maybe driving incremental gains in their businesses.
Yeah. So Jamie, somebody listens to this and is like, 2026, I want to be on that list. What's the one thing that you would tell them based on the data? Focus on this one thing.
Yeah, take your 4.8 review score and make it a 4.95. If you do that, like you'll probably show up on the list.
Awesome. I always love talking to you.
I passed on like how to go from a 4.8 to a 4.96, but
that would be a fascinating show.
Yeah, it would.
So it's super fascinating. Okay, so we want to be respectful of your time. The last question that I had for you, I saw Dave from Rent Responsibly yesterday up here in Denver.
Yep.
And one of the things that he shared with me is through the effort that Rent Responsibly is doing, and I'm working on getting them on the show as well, in terms of like growing the associations of short-term rentals. So when he started 5 years ago, whatever, how long ago, only 3 or 4 out of the 50 states had an association. Now I believe he said it was like between 18 and 20. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about what you guys are seeing from that perspective. Meaning, is the crackdown continuing to happen? Do you feel like most towns are now starting to get an understanding of like, okay, this is how we make this run? Because again, it does have a beneficial impact to community and people, or walk us through that.
Yeah. I still think the biggest risk to all of our revenue in the short-term rental industry is not underperformance. It's not bad investments. It's regulation. So a significant portion of my day actually gets spent like on helping local groups and providing them data to help fight regulation. So we're a partner with Dave with Rent Responsibly. We give them all our data to sort of help promote sort of industry advocacy. They're on the front lines in the state houses, helping different groups around the country. So it seemed like the least we could do is to make sure they were armed with the best data for that fight. So a huge fan of Dave, huge fan of Dana and the entire team over there Responsibly. And like, if you're not sort of part of your state or local advocacy group, like you should be part of it. And if you're one of those 30 states that doesn't have one, like Dave is is working hard to get them all going. And I wouldn't necessarily wait for someone else to get it going. Like, and a lot of times, like, as we talk about this, like people, when they know the efforts getting put together, they're willing and able to join. It gives an opportunity to get hosts together, get investors together that all have sort of a common theme around what they're doing. You can get together, sort of share best practices. I present sort of and do a thing with the Atlanta Short-Term Rental Alliance every few months where I just come in and like give a presentation on Atlanta performance. I provide decks to a lot of other groups that sort of do it in their local markets as well. I'm happy to join virtually or send someone on our team. So it's something where you can get people together. There's the common goal around advocacy and making sure you're all staying up on like what bills are people proposing, what is sort of coming through the pipeline, what local cities might be having something come up for debate, and making sure that there's someone from the community there. There's local voices that are proponents of the industry. There's so many times you get people that are anti-short-term rentals. They're the only ones that show up to the meeting. And that's when laws get enacted that are very anti short-term rentals. It's a lot of times it's just because there's not a voice for it.
I love that. Cool. So as always, I appreciate you coming on the show. I love, and I think I tell you this every time you come on the show, your passion for what you do is evident, right? And I think we all absolutely benefit from your love of the game. Because again, AirDNA wouldn't be what it is without you. And so our thanks goes to you as always. And then the last question we ask you, and we should do a collection of what Jamie answered over time. If we have asked it every single time, I don't remember. But what's the number one secret to success with short-term rentals.
And I feel like you're leading me now with those nice words, but having a passion around what you're doing, whether it's hosting, whether it's investing, bringing that passion to what you're doing is going to lead you to do well, no matter what that is.
Love that. Riley, any last thoughts?
No, thanks, Jamie. This was really insightful. And as always, you're one of my favorite people in the industry. So keep doing what you're doing. I didn't know you did all that on the regulation side too. We could have a whole nother podcast on that. I've been through a lot of that over the last 2 years. So, but I'm sure we'll chat about it another time.
Awesome. Guys, thanks so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. And I know the listeners got a lot of this, so we do appreciate you. Well, guys, we'll see you on the next one. Ciao for now.